She laughed when she said it. That was the part that haunted me the most. Even your son thinks you're a failure. It slipped out of her mouth like a joke, like it meant nothing. Like years of sacrifice, exhaustion, and quiet suffering could be reduced to a punchline tossed across a kitchen filled with dishes, resentment, and cold air. And yet, he didn't say a word. My son, my own flesh and blood, just stood there, still, silent, eyes low. And that silence? It felt like an earthquake that cracked something deep inside me. Something I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. There was a dull hum in the room after she said it, like the fridge was buzzing too loud or the ceiling fan above. Our heads had suddenly decided to sound off in protest. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat, and all I could do was stare at him. At my boy, hoping he'd shake his head, whispery, no. Anything, but nothing came. He turned and walked back to his room like it didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. She looked at me, then Bianca, and smirked. That smug, dry smile that didn't belong to the woman I once fell in love with. The woman I married. The woman I thought I was building a life with. You take everything so seriously, she said, already opening the dishwasher. Relax, it was a joke. But it wasn't. Not to me. Not to the man who worked nights so she could go back to school. Who missed birthdays to pay bills. Who took pride in packing his son's lunch just the way he liked it, without crusts. Apple slices in the corner, one of those little notes that always said, "Love you, champ." Not to the man who, despite every mistake, every argument, every moment of inadequacy, tried. I went to the bathroom and locked the door. Not to cry. Not yet. I didn't even sit. I just stood there, staring at myself in the mirror. The reflection looking back at me wasn't a man. It was a shell, pale, wrinkled at the edges. Eyes hollow like they had given up on ever being seen again. And the worst part? I started to believe her, that maybe I was a failure, maybe I had been chasing the idea of a family so hard, I didn't see what it had already become. That while I was busy holding the pieces together, everyone else had already walked away from the table. I ran my hand through my hair. It was thinning faster than I cared to admit. My jaw clenched without permission. And for the first time in a long time, I questioned something I never dared to touch. Had I already lost them? Or did I ever really have them? That night I didn't sleep. I laid on the couch, pretending the springs didn't dig into my spine, pretending the hallway light wasn't flickering, pretending I didn't hear my son's door creak open and close again without him coming to check on me. Because that's what hurt the most. Not her words. Not even her laughter, but his silence. The quiet agreement of a boy who once thought I was a superhero. A boy who used to run to the door when I came home from work. Who used to draw pictures of us holding hands under the sun. Who used to call me daddy with a sparkle in his voice that could erase the worst day. Now, nothing. Just silence. I stared at the ceiling until morning, wondering how we got here. Wondering if I missed the signs. If I ignored the warnings. If I'd been so obsessed with providing that I forgot to be present. And the truth is, wasn't perfect. I lost my patience more than I should have. I carried stress like a backpack full of stones, and sometimes dumped it out on the people I loved most. I buried emotions, convinced that staying silent made me stronger. I said things I wish I could take back. I left too early some nights. I stayed too late at work. I checked out, but I never stopped loving them. Even now as I stood in that bathroom, numb, drained, dizzy with shame. I still loved them. Maybe that's why it hurt so much. Because love, real love, doesn't vanish overnight. It decays, slowly, quietly, without ceremony. And in that decay, I began to realize something that chilled me to the bone. This family I thought I built. This home I thought I fought for. Maybe it never existed the way I imagined. Maybe it was just an illusion I held on to, too blind to see the cracks in the walls. too deaf to hear the growing silence in the halls. And maybe, just maybe, the boy who looked away that night wasn't ashamed of me. Maybe he was just reflecting what he'd been taught to believe. But I wasn't ready to face that. Not yet, because the truth I was about to uncover, the one hiding beneath years of routine and forced smiles, it would change everything. The next morning, I didn't speak much. I moved through the house like a ghost in my own home, avoiding the creaky floorboard near the kitchen, stepping softly so I wouldn't hear my own footsteps. Bianca was already gone, probably to the gym, or to that overpriced coffee place she started frequenting after she met her new friends. The ones who always talked about raising standards and finding your glow again. Like a marriage was a cage you needed to escape from. My son Ethan sat at the dining table, staring at a half-eaten bowl of cereal. He was still in his pajamas, legs swinging back and forth beneath the chair, rhythmically, aimlessly, like he didn't even realize he was doing it. I poured myself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter. No words, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional clink of his spoon against ceramic. I wanted to say something. I wanted to ask him what he meant when he didn't say anything. I wanted to know if he really thought I was a failure. But how do you ask your child something like that without breaking both of you? Instead, I said, "Did you sleep okay?" He shrugged. "Yeah." "You sure?" Another shrug. "I guess." And that was it. I took my coffee to the back porch and sat down. The wood was cool under my feet, still damp from the night's rain. The sun hadn't fully come out yet. It hovered behind a bank of gray clouds, uncertain, half committed to the day. The same way I felt about everything lately. I closed my eyes and tried to rewind my life, back to the first time I held him. Back to when Bianca and I used to stay up late watching shows, laughing so loud we'd have to muffle ourselves with pillows. Back to when the sound of her voice felt like a comfort, not a weapon. But the tape was broken. It skipped, blurred, snapped. There were too many missing pieces. Somewhere along the way, love turned into endurance, and endurance turned into silence. I remember one afternoon about a year ago. Ethan must have been around 9 then. I picked him up from school and surprised him with a trip to the batting cages. He had been obsessed with baseball that month. We spent hours there. He laughed every time I missed. I still hear that laugh sometimes in my dreams, bright, clean, the kind that makes you believe everything's okay. When we got home, Bianca barely looked up from her phone. I told her about the day, how he hit a line drive that nearly took my head off. She smiled, but it wasn't real. It was the kind of smile you give a stranger in an elevator, polite, but disconnected. That was the first time I felt it. The wall, not just between her and me, but between all of us. Invisible at first. Then slowly, brick by brick, argument by argument, silence by silence, it grew. It wasn't just what she said last night that broke me. It was the confirmation of something I had been trying not to see. This wasn't about a single insult. This was about an erosion of love. Later that day, I was driving Ethan to his soccer practice. He sat in the back seat now always. I used to love when he rode up front, when he'd ask questions about the world, the kind that make you smile because of how innocent they are. Now he wore headphones, always drowning out the silence I was too afraid to fill. The stoplight turned red. I glanced in the rearview mirror. "Hey," I said. He pulled off one earbud. "What?" "Yesterday, when your mom said that thing about me being a failure." He looked away. "You didn't say anything. I wanted to know if that's really how you feel." He didn't answer right away. He scratched at a spot on his jeans, fiddled with his fingers. Then he mumbled, "You and Mom fight all the time." "I know," I said. "And I'm sorry. Sometimes, I just wish things were quieter." That hit harder than anything he could have said. Not, "You're mean." Not, "I hate you." Just a quiet wish for peace. When we got home, I sat alone in the garage for over an hour, door closed, engine off, keys in my lap. I didn't cry. I just stared at the dashboard. And I realized something. It wasn't that he thought I was a failure, it was that he didn't think of me much at all anymore. I had become background, noise, predictable, frustrated, absent even when present. And Bianca? She was rewriting our history right in front of him. With every jab, every cold stare, every passive-aggressive comment about how things used to be better before your dad got like this. She wasn't just angry at me, she was shaping how our son would remember me. And I let her. I handed her the brush, and she painted me as the villain. That night I decided to stop waiting for things to go back to how they were. I needed to know what was really going on, because something didn't feel right anymore. This wasn't just a tired marriage, it was something deeper, something hidden, and I was done pretending not to see it. The next few days were quiet, but not the kind of quiet that brings peace. It was the kind that feels like walking through a house just after a storm, nothing visibly broken, but everything feels off, out of place, suspended. Bianca was polite. Almost too polite. She offered me coffee one morning, asked if I needed anything from the store, even folded my sweatshirt and left it on the armrest of the couch. Small gestures that would have meant something if they didn't feel like apologies for something she hadn't said out loud. I watched her closely. The way she typed too fast when texting, smiling at her phone but never at me. The way she always kept her screen turned away when I walked into the room. The way she laughed a little louder when she answered calls in the bedroom. But it wasn't just her behavior. It was Ethan's too. He stopped coming into my room to say goodnight. Stopped leaving drawings on the fridge. Stopped talking about school. Every time I tried to connect, there was a short answer, a distracted yeah, or I don't know, or it's fine. Like I was someone he had to update, not someone he could open up to. The distance was growing, and I didn't know how to close it. Then, one night, I walked past his room and saw the light from his tablet glowing under the covers. I cracked the door open softly. "Hey," I said. He jumped a little and yanked the blanket down. "What are you watching?" "Just YouTube. Can I see?" He hesitated. "It's nothing. Just a video." I walked in and sat beside him on the bed. The screen was paused. A man, bald, serious, intense, was talking straight into the camera. At the bottom, it said, 10 signs of a toxic parent. My stomach twisted. "Why are you watching this?" I asked gently. Ethan looked down. "Mom said it might help me understand things better." My mouth went dry. "She said what?" He bit his lip. "She said sometimes it's hard for kids to know what's normal when they're used to yelling and stress. And that it's okay to learn." I sat back, stunned. This wasn't just tension anymore. This was influence. This was manipulation dressed as self-help. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Not because of anger, but because I realized I'd been playing checkers while she was playing chess. She wasn't trying to win an argument. She was rewriting reality, subtly, quietly, one suggestion at a time. I remembered something months earlier when we were at a friend's barbecue. Ethan dropped a plate and I raised my voice. Not yelling, just sharp. He froze. Bianca swooped in and said with a smile, loud enough for others to hear, "He's just scared Daddy's going to explode again." People laughed, uncomfortable. I laughed too, but inside I was humiliated. I brushed it off then. But now, looking back, I realized she had been planting seeds all along. Tiny moments. Jokes with edges. Comments in front of others. A story built piece by piece, and I let her, out of exhaustion. Out of fear of confrontation. Out of some pathetic hope that things would return to what they once were. But they weren't going to. Because this wasn't just about our marriage. This was about control, narrative control. And I was losing it. The next morning, I started paying more attention. I watched her phone when she wasn't looking. Not invading, just observing. She was getting texts late at night, around 11, from someone saved as T. Jones. The name meant nothing, but the smile on her face when they came in, that meant everything. She changed passwords on her devices. She started locking the bathroom door, even when she was just brushing her teeth. She began sleeping in a t-shirt. I'd never seen before. Small things, but I noticed. One night, I tested a theory. I asked her casually, "Do you remember that cabin trip we took with Ethan when he was 6? She nodded. "Yeah, of course." "What was the name of the diner we loved?" She blinked. "The one with the milkshakes?" "Yeah." She hesitated. "I think it was Benny's." "It wasn't. It was Darla's. She loved that place." We both did. She had taken a photo of her burger and said it was the best thing she'd eaten in years, but now it was like that memory didn't belong to her anymore. Or maybe it didn't include me anymore. That's when I knew something had shifted. Not just in her heart, but in her story. She wasn't holding on to the past. She was replacing it. And Ethan was the audience. I needed to know more, not to hurt her, not to trap her, but because I had to know what I was really fighting against. Was this just resentment? Or was there someone else? Someone in the shadows of her phone? Someone feeding her the narrative she was passing on to our son? Someone who wanted me small, dismissed, forgotten. Because if I could find that truth, I could finally decide what I needed to do. And what kind of father I wanted to be. Not for her, not even for Ethan, but for me. Because maybe I had failed in some ways, but I wasn't going to fail quietly. Not anymore. The decision came slowly. I didn't rage. I didn't accuse. I didn't shout or slam doors. That version of me, the one who used to react, to defend, to beg for clarity, was gone. Whatever Bianca had been trying to provoke in me, I refused to give her any more. I would be calm. Focused. I would find the truth, not through confrontation, but through observation. It started with a charger. One night, she left her laptop open in the living room, said she was going to shower, and asked me to plug it in for her. I nodded, waited until the water started running upstairs. I opened the lid just slightly, just enough. The browser was still open. So was a tab, a private messaging thread. Facebook of all things. Old school. Maybe she thought it was less obvious than texts. Or maybe she just didn't care if I found out. The name on the messages? Travis. No last name. But I didn't need one. The tone of the messages told me everything. Not explicit, not romantic in the obvious sense. It was more dangerous than that. It was intimate, familiar, deep, a kind of coded affection that only exists when two people have shared more than they should. You handled it perfectly. Let him think it's all in his head. Ethan's already seeing who he really is. Kids are smart like that. Soon, you won't have to walk on eggshells. Just hold out a little longer. My stomach twisted. She wasn't just rewriting our marriage. She was coaching our son into seeing me as the villain with someone else guiding her hand. Travis. I had never heard of him. Never met him. He wasn't a coworker as far as I knew. He didn't show up in family conversations, or holidays, or inside jokes. He was a ghost, and yet, he knew about me, about our life, about my failures. I stared at the screen, heart thudding in my ears, hand trembling above the trackpad. I could have taken a picture, forwarded the conversation, printed it all, but I didn't. Because this wasn't about proof. This was about clarity. And now I had it. When she came back downstairs, hair wet, wrapped in a towel, I handed her the charger and smiled. "Here you go." She didn't look up. "Thanks." I watched her retreat upstairs again. Same woman, same body, same features, but someone entirely different from the person I married. I sat on the couch for a long time that night, not crying, not raging, just sitting in the silence she left behind. The next day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I left work early, Picked Ethan up from school. We went to the park. The old one we used to go to when he was little. The one with the duck pond. And the broken seesaw and the worn-down bench with our initials carved into it, BM. Forever a relic from better days. He was quiet at first, but I didn't push. We walked. Threw a few rocks into the pond. Watched a couple of ducks chase each other. Then I asked, "You remember when we used to come here?" He nodded. "Kinda. You used to laugh so hard when I tried to chase you up the slide." He smiled faintly. "You always got stuck." "I let you win," I said. "No, you didn't." I laughed. Then I got quiet again. "I want to ask you something, buddy. And you can be honest with me. I can handle it." He looked up at me, cautious. "Do you think I'm a bad dad?" His eyes widened. He looked down. "I don't know. It's okay if you're not sure. I just want to understand what you see. What you feel. You can tell me anything." He kicked at a patch of dirt. "I think sometimes. Mom makes it sound like everything's your fault." My chest tightened. "Do you think that?" "I don't know," he whispered. "She says you always mess things up, that you yell, that you make us feel small." I swallowed hard. "Have I made you feel small?" He didn't answer, but he didn't nod either. "That's not what I ever wanted. I've been stressed, yeah, I've made mistakes. But I love you more than anything in this world. And I'm still learning how to be better." He finally looked at me. "Mom says people don't change. Do you believe that?" He hesitated, then said, "I want to." It was the most honest thing I'd heard in weeks. I put my hand on his shoulder. "Then I'll show you. Not with words, with time. With choices." We sat there until the sun dipped below the trees. When we got home, Bianca was already there. Dressed up, perfume lingering. She gave us both a tight smile. "How was the park?" "It was good," I said. "Nice to get some clarity." She tilted her head. "Meaning?" I smiled. "Meaning I remember what matters." That night I started making plans. Not revenge, not exposure. Just preparation. I created a private email account. I started journaling every interaction. Every odd moment. Everything she said that didn't line up. Quietly, methodically. I began documenting everything, not to win a case, but to remember the truth if the day ever came that I needed it. Because I wasn't going to lose my son. Not to her. Not to Travis. Not to this twisted story they were trying to write without me. I wasn't ready for what I found next. At first, I just thought Travis was a shadow figure, someone on the periphery. Maybe an emotional affair, maybe more. But what I didn't expect was how deep it went. How calculated it all seemed, like I wasn't just living in a broken marriage. I was living in a performance where I was the only one who hadn't read the script. It started with a single search. I waited until Bianca left for another yoga class. The one she always came back from with perfect hair and no trace of sweat. I opened our shared desktop, an old PC she rarely used, and checked the search history. It was all there. Searches for narcissistic father effects on child, custody strategies for single moms, and worst of all, how to document a partner's emotional instability. Each phrase hit like a blow to the chest. She hadn't just given up on us. She had been preparing for war. I clicked deeper. There were saved documents hidden in an oddly named folder buried under receipts. One of them was a log. A timeline of my outbursts. Moments where I raised my voice. Days when I missed bedtime. Conversations twisted into weapons. And every word framed me as unstable, aggressive, unreliable. I sat there, frozen, as the truth unfolded before me. This wasn't just a crumbling relationship. It was a setup. I scrolled through the timeline. She had dates, descriptions, even screenshots of text messages I'd sent out of frustration moments I thought were private, raw, human. They were all laid out, curated to tell a story. One where she was the victim, and I was the monster. And then there was Travis again. His name showed up in the metadata of a document she'd edited, a shared Google Drive between them. They had been planning this together, discussing how to frame the narrative, how to guide Ethan gently to his own conclusions, how to document volatility. They were documenting me, using the quiet chaos of a dying relationship to construct a case against me, not in court. Not yet, but in my son's heart. I felt sick, not just because of the betrayal, but because I had handed them the brush. All my silence, my passivity, my exhaustion. I had made it easy for them to paint me as the villain. And now I was wide awake. I stood from the desk, hands trembling. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't storm out. I just stood there and realized this was never about us falling out of love. This was about erasing me entirely. I walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at the mirror again. The man I saw this time was different from the one a week ago. He wasn't broken. He was preparing. I started making copies, screenshots, backups, printed documents, and sealed them in an envelope marked with a name only I would recognize. I placed it at the bottom of a locked toolbox in the garage. Then I made an appointment, not with a lawyer, with a therapist, not for Bianca, for Ethan, for me, because if I was going to reclaim my story, I needed to do it from a place of truth, not rage. The therapist's office was warm, beige, safe. She had kind eyes and a quiet way of asking questions that didn't feel invasive, just guiding. After the second session, she said something that stuck with me. "It sounds like you've been trying to keep a house from collapsing without realizing someone else was already dismantling it from the inside." Exactly. I had been holding up walls that she'd already planned to burn, and Ethan, my son, was being raised inside that smoke. But I wasn't powerless, not anymore. I started talking to Ethan more, not prying, not defending myself, just being present. Every school pickup, every dinner I made just the way he liked it. Every time I chose patience over frustration. I was reclaiming those small moments, the ones Bianca had abandoned in her pursuit of image and victory. And slowly, something shifted. One night, I found a drawing on the fridge again. It was a simple sketch. A boy holding the hand of a man. The sun was big. The grass was green. And in the corner, in sloppy, hopeful letters, he had written, "Me and Dad." I didn't ask for it. I didn't mention it. But I stared at it for a long time. The tears come in quietly this time. Because it wasn't just a drawing. It was proof that some part of him still remembered, still believed, still hoped, and that meant I had a chance, but I had to be careful, precise, because Bianca wasn't done. Not yet. I knew something was coming. The way she smiled too sweetly when I tucked Ethan in, the way she called me by my full name when we spoke, in front of him, Michael, like a stranger, the way she suddenly wanted to go to family mediation, just to be clear on things. She was preparing for something, and now, so was I. It came on a Wednesday. Ethan was staying overnight with her mother, something Bianca arranged last minute, saying he needed a break from all the tension. I knew what it was. A clean stage for the final act she'd been rehearsing behind closed doors. She came downstairs with a folder in hand, thick, precise, like a weapon wrapped in manila. "We need to talk," she said, her voice smooth, practiced. I nodded, sat on the couch. The same couch I'd slept on for weeks while pretending I was fine. She placed the folder on the coffee table, slid it toward me. "I've been advised to begin a separation plan. For Ethan's sake, and mine." There it was. No shock, no anger, just a wave of finality washing over the last pieces of whatever we used to be. I didn't reach for the folder. Instead, I looked at her carefully. Her hands were perfectly still, folded in her lap, nails manicured. Expression calm. Too calm. She had expected resistance, maybe shouting, maybe tears, but I gave her none of that. "I see," I said quietly. She blinked. Just once, a flicker of confusion. I think it's best if we do this without lawyers for now, she continued. Mediation, co-parenting plan, equal time, but with safeguards, emotional boundaries. We both know Ethan's sensitive. You've been planning this, I said. Not as a question. She didn't deny it. It didn't have to be like this, Michael, she said softly, her voice almost pitying. But you're not the man I married anymore. And I don't want Ethan growing up in fear of who you're becoming. That was the line, the one she'd written in her head a dozen times, maybe even rehearsed with Travis, but it didn't land, because I didn't flinch. Instead, I leaned forward. Does Travis know how far you're willing to go? Her eyes widened just slightly. That tight flicker at the corner of her mouth, the brief lapse of control. I don't know what you mean, she said. Yes, you do. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, took the envelope from the drawer, the one I had prepared, quietly, carefully. I placed it beside the folder she'd given me. I didn't open yours, I said. But I think you should open mine. She hesitated, then pulled the tab, read the first page. And her posture shifted. Screenshots, message logs, Google Doc histories, timeline inconsistencies. I had only printed a fraction, just enough to remind her I wasn't blind anymore. I don't want custody battles, I said. I don't want revenge. But I won't be erased. And I won't let Ethan grow up with a version of me sculpted out of your bitterness. She didn't look up. I stayed quiet for too long. Not because I was weak, but because I was trying to protect the little good we still had. But you've used that silence against me. She closed the folder. Still no rage. No scene. Just a shift. A realization that I wasn't playing her game anymore. I made mistakes, I said. I shut down. I failed as a partner more times than I can count. But I was here. I stayed. I tried. And I never used our son as a pawn. She swallowed hard. Her hands were trembling now, her nails pressing into her palms. I didn't want it to go this far, she said, her voice cracking. I nodded. But you planned for it. You needed it to. She didn't deny it, because there was nothing left to deny. It wasn't a courtroom. It wasn't a fight. It was just truth. Naked, quiet, unavoidable. And in that silence she broke. Tears welled, but she blinked them back. She reached for her folder again but didn't open it, just held it. Like she didn't know what to do now that the power dynamic had shifted. You can still leave with dignity, I said. We can still parent him with grace, but I won't let you rewrite me out of his life. Not as a villain, not as a failure. She nodded slowly, and just like that. It was over. Not the pain, not the damage, but the war. She stood up, folder in hand, and walked upstairs. I heard the soft creak of our bedroom door. Then silence, and in that silence, for the first time in months, I exhaled. Not relief. But release. A few weeks later, the house was quieter. The walls didn't hold tension anymore, they just held echoes. Ethan came back to me slowly, in pieces. A longer hug here. A quiet, can we hang out tonight? There. The drawings returned. The small smiles. Trust, bit by bit. We started seeing a family counselor together. Bianca didn't come. She said she was too busy. But Ethan came, willingly, and each week I saw him unfold again. Like a flower that had stopped blooming, finally catching sunlight. One day, he asked, Dad, are you mad at Mom? I paused. No, I said, just sad. Why? Because we forgot how to be kind to each other. And when people forget kindness, they hurt each other without meaning to. He nodded slowly. I'm glad you're still here, he said. That was all I needed. Not forgiveness, not glory. Just that. I'm glad you're still here. I don't think stories like mine end with happy ever after. They end with choices, with healing, with small victories. With learning how to exist after your world is cracked, and realizing you're still standing. And sometimes the deepest love is not the one that saves a relationship. It's the one that fights quietly for the right to be remembered. Honestly, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Because when she said, even your son thinks you're a failure, I believed her. But now I know better. I was never failing. I was just unseen. And finally, I see myself again.